Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another episode of me on the Touchline. This is the post-game week show for game week 28. Obviously, 10 games have happened over the weekend. We'll talk about them. This episode is going to be a little bit different. I won't go through exactly each game one by one. I just want to take it as an overall picture. Really trying to keep the videos a little bit shorter. Just have a little bit of a conversation here and there. Just trying to talk about the Premier League in general over the past week. Obviously, I think some games have been rather disappointing. We'll get into that. But yeah, just try a little bit of a different format here and there again. Just try to keep things fresh. But obviously, thank you very much for the support over the past couple of videos, rather ever since the start of these series. Drop a like on the video, guys. Have enjoyed, and of course, subscribe if you are new around here. But yeah, let's jump right in. So obviously you can see the Premier League table once again. Liverpool extended gap at the top of the table, which obviously is not good. But ultimately that means they're just one step closer to winning the Premier League for them. And you have a look at the bottom three, Wolves with their draw against Everton. Obviously, they do move slightly ahead of both Ipswich and Leicester City. Obviously Southampton again, it's getting more and more bleak. The gap now is about 14 points. Which arguably means that they can get relegated in about 6 games' time, which is impending, obviously, isn't it? As for the other teams above, I mean, obviously the top 10, essentially, there's a little bit of a switch. But of course, I think the gap is getting slightly bigger now. In fact, if you look at Fulham, just lost another game, they're on 42 points. The gap to Nottingham Forest is now at 9, which is getting slightly sizable, isn't it? Of course, and then when you have a look at teams like Chelsea, obviously overtaking Man City, Newcastle, Brighton, Villa, all very close now to Man City's points tally, which means now third to 8th, or rather maybe third to 9th is getting tighter than expected. Obviously Everton, with another draw, still beaten ever since Moyes' arrival. And obviously looking at Tottenham now, Tottenham, Man United, Everton, all really, really tight there. And Brentford, Palace could ultimately fight for a top 10 finish now, with Fulham, I'd say, slightly falling behind, and Palace and Brentford probably catching up, especially Crystal Palace. 4 wins in the past 5 Premier League games is obviously a pretty decent record. Obviously, looking at the statistics, Mohamed Salah with 27 goals, Erling Haaland with 20, Isak with 19, and Wood 18, 15, and Buemo. Not too much changes here, to be honest. And as for the assists, it stayed the same as for the top 5. Right, so here were my predictions. I still can't get past the 5 out of 10, to be honest. Of the 5 that predicted the outcome correctly, obviously Brighton and Fulham have predicted the result exactly correct. And obviously when I look at other results, I just think, they look pretty accurate, to be honest. As in, the outcome-wise, I felt like it's pretty good anyways, in hindsight. I was very worried, obviously, when I was recording this video. I was saying that, I'm not sure how the predictions are going to pan out, but to be honest, now looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, that's probably pretty accurate still, in my opinion. And yeah, obviously results don't always go your way, because of the results wise. Nottingham Forest beat Man City by a goal to nil. Liverpool beating Southampton by 3 goals to 1. Palace 1-0 against Ipswich. Brighton Fulham obviously 2-1. Brentford losing to Villa by a goal to nil. Wolves drawing with Everton 1-0. Tottenham drawing Bournemouth 2-2. Chelsea beating Leicester by a pretty slim margin there, 1-0. Man United Arsenal 1-1 draw. West Ham 0, Newcastle 1. So yeah, as I said, I mean, I'm just trying to, spend some time here to just talk about the Premier League game week in general. I think, spending about 5 to 10 minutes, and that's about it. Don't really want the videos to be exceptionally long, which ultimately could be a little bit too much sometimes, I understand. So I mean, obviously, to look at it in general, I think I want to talk about Nottingham Forest and City first. Obviously disappointing, to be honest, from City's perspective. Again, the football that we've been playing, it's not been really efficient. It's not been great. We've not been cut out really for this level to really fight at the top of the season. We have just been absolutely horrible. And the way I look at it is, it's going to be very difficult again moving forward. The form has been so up and down. We've been winning, losing, winning, losing, winning, losing. Lack of consistency in general. To be honest, I think what can really salvage this particular season for City is obviously a top 4 finish and / or FA Cup glory. Because if you don't finish in the top 4, which is obviously, to me, is a disappointing season already, and we don't win the FA Cup, it shows how bad we've been this season. And I think, it's going to be very difficult to accept coming into next season, of course. I mean, we've had Liverpool, who have, had experienced this before once, in the Klopp era. and they still managed to climb out of it. So I would say I'm confident in some to a certain extent that City are going to climb back. Going to come back eventually. It's just a matter of how they're going to really navigate the rest of the season, because it's obviously not in a good, they're not in a good spot at the moment, and we really need them to pick up the feet really for the rest of the season now. Obviously, it's very unlike them, as I said, because usually towards the tail end of the season, their form is obviously impeccable. This one, yeah, unfortunately, is the complete opposite of what we've been expecting. So I think that has been, huge problems moving ahead. And of course, the gap to Liverpool, let's not even talk about that anymore. I mean, it's so sizable. It's at like 20 points now. And it's obviously gone for sure, right? But I mean, we're talking about, just cracking the top four, really. I think we can let Liverpool win the league this season, and we have to accept that Liverpool have been exceptional this season. Even when they're 1-0 down against Southampton at half time, they still could manage that. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, the constant never give up sort of mentality that's inherent in Liverpool's team here. It's exactly what keeps them going. And of course, the only loss came against Nottingham Forest, which is obviously remarkable. Yeah, considering how Nottingham Forest have been so pretty decent this season, and I think the worries again, you can just shrug them off a little bit, because obviously the win against Man City helps to alleviate that sort of pain. And for Southampton, I mean, they're obviously screwed in a moment, compared to to be fair, even their counterparts, Ipswich, promoted counterparts, Ipswich and Leicester City. Obviously, a lot of problems for both of those sides. Of course, I predicted Ipswich to have a shock win against Palace, and obviously that ultimately didn't happen. And obviously Palace now 4 wins out of 5. I wouldn't say it's scary ultimately, but again, this is sort of form. As I said, we've been inspecting off the club when Glasner was gonna have his first full season in charge. And it's positive, isn't it? I mean, to see the club performing like this, it's good. I think I think that's exactly what the club needs as of now, to just try to push themselves up the table as much as possible. And ultimately, with this win, they are closing down to Fulham, and of course Brentford in their sights as well. They could potentially crack in the top 10, Crystal Palace, which then ultimately would dictate a pretty decent season. But of course, talking about Fulham, I mean, this defeat to Brighton is, I wouldn't say expected. Ultimately, we knew the game was going to be challenging. We knew the game was going to be tight. We knew what Brighton were capable of. Ultimately, Brighton, they've been so good in general. They've been fighting really tooth and nail a lot of the games. And of course, the draws column doesn't look pretty. Neither does Everton's draw column look, to be honest. But of course, ultimately, Brighton, with their recent form, it's been obviously sensational from them, and obviously that has allowed them to pick up quite a number of wins, and now ultimately closing down towards top four position, which I think if you told me that a couple of games ago, considering their form, I knew it was going to, I would have thought it was going to be really difficult. But ultimately, form in the Premier League has been pretty chaotic this season. Some teams, they could go on a really good run of form. Some teams just don't. Obviously, if you look at Liverpool, as I've said, their form has been exceptional this season, which obviously has managed to land them to where they are right now. So comfortable here at the top of the table. They can literally just afford to rest a couple of players for like 1-2 games, and just try to get the best result ultimately, and then obviously fight again. Or they could just really fight till it's mathematically impossible for other teams to catch up, and then that's when they can obviously be a lot more relaxed. Because I think for them the priority after the Premier League has got to be the Champions League, and of course the FA Cup, the FA Cup game against Newcastle, the final is obviously going to be very, very important for them. Ultimately, any sort of trophy is a glory for a club, and I'm sure they want to do whatever they can to do that. But yeah, speaking about Brighton and Fulham, ultimately, yeah, which is going to be obviously problematic for Fulham moving forward, because they do still look bright ultimately. Obviously, results haven't really gone their way, which ultimately has given them a lot of problems, and ultimately they're just ahead of Brentford and Palace. And Brighton obviously trying to fight with the likes of Aston Villa, who ultimately, have won their game against Brentford. Slim, but still a win is a win ultimately. And of course, again, the inconsistency in the Premier League is showing massively, which I still feel that, at the end of the day, you really just want them to be as clinical and as efficient as they can be, because what how capable Villa are. And of course, against Club Brugge, I mean, the Champions League, they should be progressing to the next round rather comfortably, to be honest. And if they don't, obviously I'll be very, very surprised. As for Brentford, I mean, at home, I guess home advantage should be playing to the favour. Ultimately, I think it was a draw, and obviously they've lost, which Obviously, show signs, of course, that there are still things to work out, to work at this team, of course. And as I said, Villa, obviously, great result for them. Ultimately, as I said, they're climbing for as high a position as possible. At least they're still in the running, and I think that's really important for them. But of course, you have had Wolves and Everton, a 1-1 draw. Ultimately, I think I think Everton have had 12 draws this season. Nearly half their games have been draws. Obviously, Sean Dyche's era also contributed to that number quite a bit, and obviously for David Moyes, I think it's also quite a lot. To be honest, obviously a very good thing. I don't really want to jinx it either, but of course their loss column hasn't increased. The only things that have increased are the draws and their win column. And because of that, picking up points rather consistently, game in, game out, has helped them to extend their gap from the bottom of the table, or rather the bottom three. And I think the gap is now at 16 points, which means ultimately, they genuinely should be safe moving forward. Unless something crazy happens, which I genuinely hope not, they should be relatively safe for the rest of the season. I don't really see how things are gonna go for the worst in general. So I think it's gonna be good for them, obviously. But then for Wolves, I think it's gonna be something challenging moving forward. Of course, Leicester City and Ipswich don't exactly look too um, threatening moving forward. I don't exactly believe that it's going to be something that they're going to have to really think about too much. I mean, finishing 17th ultimately is a really poor season from them, considering they've done so much better over the past couple of seasons. But of course, as I said, the squad that they've been having, lack of ambitious plays, or rather just the lack of quality in general, has obviously unfortunately put them in such a situation. And with Cunha potentially leaving, it's going to be even more problematic. And just really got to sort themselves out, because they've obviously sold a lot of their very good players to other clubs, and they've not managed to find replacements of their own. So I think that ultimately is one of the key contributions to the problems that's surfacing at the club. And ultimately that has been the problem essentially for the entirety of the season. Of course, Everton, as I said, they're still doing reasonably well. As it stands, I mean, sacking Dyche was probably a good decision, I guess. Ultimately, a club only wants results, and of course now they're fighting for Tottenham, with Tottenham and Manchester United for I'd say maybe 12th, maybe the 12th, 13th position thereabouts. And of course, Tottenham, they did draw against Bournemouth, and this game has always proven to be quite a classic. A lot of goals between both of these sides whenever they play against each other. But of course, I think this one, it was going to be difficult anyways. Tottenham weren't exactly in the worst run of form, and Bournemouth, thing again, sort of unpredictability of them. Of course, we know they are pretty decent, but it's not going to be always easy against a Tottenham side, and especially at home in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's actually quite a difficult stadium to play with. So ultimately, I think Bournemouth will go struggle a little bit here and there, but I think on a very good day, of course, I think Bournemouth would probably win, because just looking at the way Tottenham been playing this season, it hasn't been, obviously, as I said, it hasn't been convincing enough for me to say that Tottenham have done really well this season. They've scored a lot of goals, obviously, but clearly they've also conceded a lot of goals. They're not getting the points on board, and obviously, I think that's created a lot of problems for them as well this season. And because of that, they are currently where they are. And also Bournemouth, obviously, this to them could be arguably a disappointment when, as I said, they're trying to fight for Europe, trying to fight for Champions League. They need more than this, for sure. But I still think it's obviously a pretty good result. Compared to other clubs, after that, looking at Chelsea and Leicester City, of course, Chelsea, slim win against Leicester. Manson obviously saving Cole Palmer's penalty, I think, was the biggest highlight of the game. And yeah, Leicester again just lacking their final third, to be honest. And if you're at Chelsea, who are still, pushing, knocking on the door sometimes, trying to get the best result possible, and obviously they're doing whatever they can to get a result over the line. And this one, I think, you have to win this one, and obviously they did, which is good, obviously, for them. But I mean, for Leicester, obviously, it's going to be a lot more problematic moving forward. They're going to be absolutely worried. I'm sure of it, because I think relegation is rather impending for them. Just this game, I think, again, still lack of that convincing situation, really, when it comes to attacking again in the final third. Just not very good defensively as well. Can be pretty worrying. Yeah, I'm not sure what Rui's going to do moving forward, to be honest. Again, probably just got to just admit that it's over, and go back to the Championship and just come back up again the season after, simply because you know, I'm sure they would be a fantastic championship side, and I'm sure, you know, they would be winning a lot of games. And even the championship this season has proven to be quite a spectacle, to be honest. A lot of the clubs, you know, a lot of things are going on, really ding dong battles, even with the title as well. But yeah, that's the case, you know, for Leicester and Chelsea in general. And then of course you've got Man United and Arsenal. And arguably Manchester United could have probably won the game at the death if it weren't for Darren Rice's fantastic save. And this is, to me, this is the biggest blow ever for Arsenal, because it's clear that you know, the title race is pretty much over for them. They're not winning enough games, obviously. They've not been consistent enough, and I think they've had 10 draws a season as well, which is obviously one of the biggest factors, the reason why, you know, they've just not been as competitive as compared to Liverpool, to be honest. Liverpool have dropped points here and there. They've just not lost many. And obviously Arsenal have not lost many either. I think just 3 defeats, obviously, in the entirety of the campaign so far, which is a third of Man City's losses. But still, I think the draws is a little bit too much from them, which ultimately is one of the biggest reasons why ultimately it's not going to work out for them again this season, which I'm sure they'll be absolutely disappointed, because this will be third season in a row, as I said, ultimately, that they are like this, and obviously it's not good at all, in my opinion, if you ask me. So, but of course, Man United, I'm sure they'll be pretty positively win. But of course, again, this is not exactly where they want to be. They want to be higher than that. But again, you're looking at the state of play with the club in the moment, looking at how the players are performing, the motivation feels a little bit non-existent, etc. I think this is obviously pretty decent already. So, it's okay, to be honest. And of course, to wrap things up, Newcastle, you know, just before Liverpool. Yeah, a 1-0 win for Newcastle, a slim 1-0 win, but expected. And of course, talk about the wild card multiple times. It's obviously not good enough. I think the game was obviously pretty tight statistically and possession wise, but of course, Newcastle just had the upper edge. Again, the quality differential is obviously there, but otherwise, you know, that's it for the 10 games. Right, and that'd be, guys. Thank you very much for watching this one. As I said, you know, I'm trying to compress as much as I can and try to be as concise as possible, and hopefully I've managed to do so in this particular video. But yeah, drop a like on the video if you guys have enjoyed, and of course, subscribe if you're new around here. Get discussing in the comments down below how you guys felt this game week as went. Obviously, I think things are starting to shape up a lot better. I mean, apart from the title and the relegation spots, I think in the middle, you know, that little top 10 is starting to get clearer, obviously, as the game weeks go by. And, you know, form has obviously been one of the biggest words, honestly, of this couple of weeks. You know, without good form, you're probably not going to climb up the Premier League table. You're probably not getting results your way. And of course, once, you know, a lot of teams start to fumble, we can really see the huge impact that has on them. But that'll be it for me. Thank you very much for watching this one. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, goodbye.